Hello, this is Antonio Moore coming to you from Tone Talks. I'm here today to critique the Roots mini-series that just came out on History Channel. It's going to run over 4 days. It's a 4-hour mini-series, a remake of a classic that I have a copy of. I have a copy of the original, and actually I've had the pleasure to meet Mark Walper, who's the producer of Roots, and his father, David Walper, did the original. The original was 9 hours, and they also had Roots Next Generation, which is an additional 12 hours, I believe, and it takes you all the way through to the 70s. And so basically, the original is a total of like over 20-something hours, whereas this one is 4 hours covering much of the same terrain. Snoop Dogg gave a harsh critique, which I'm going to run in a second, stating his opinion about it, about the fact that we just need to see more positive stories, quote unquote, and we need to see, let me get it right, I'm sick of this, how the blank, they going to put Roots on Memorial Day. They just going to keep beating that into our heads as to how they did us, huh? And, Snoop, I definitely got much love for him being from the West Coast. He did the trailer on my documentary, the song for on the Iran-Contra and the crack epidemic. And also, I just got respect for his authenticity. But he's right for the wrong reasons here, and I'll give my critique on that. Let's start off with just hearing Snoop Dogg talk about Roots.
No disrespect, but I can't watch no motherfucking more black movies where niggas getting dogged out, 12 years a slave, Roots, Underground. I can't watch none of that shit. I'm sick of this shit. How the fuck they gonna put Roots on Memorial Day? They gonna just keep beating that shit in our heads of how they did us, huh? I mean, I don't understand America. They just want to just keep showing the abuse that we took hundreds and hundreds of years ago. But guess what? We taking the same abuse. Think about that part. When y'all gonna make a motherfucking series about the success that black folks is having? The only success we have is Roots and 12 Years a Slave and shit like that, huh? Fuck y'all, I ain't watching that shit. And I advise you motherfuckers that's real niggas like myself, fuck them television shows. Let's create our own shit based on the day. How we live and how we inspire people today. Black is what's real. Fuck that old shit. Right, Jules?
So now that we're on the other side of that, my thing with Snoop is something that I have said about a lot of our black celebrities, is they just, they have the right energy, just not the right guidance. And, just like a week ago, maybe about 2 weeks ago, Snoop made another comment, and it kind of connects to this in my mind. And that comment was about his progeny, his legacy, and how, when he dies, he doesn't really care what happens next. And that's why he doesn't have a will and this, that, and the other. And I think that when you start dealing with individuals and they don't have connection to the past or the future, they're just living in the moment. And that traditionally was something for poor people. But when you have like the few black millionaires, especially celebrity millionaires, start to live that way, it definitely pushes black America in the wrong direction. Because the key component of wealth is to live for legacy. If you're just living for like this lifetime, it's just not enough. And so I think that people that are poor get filled up on that. But if you take that into wealth, it can actually eat you up. And so, my thing about his comments isn't so much to say that he isn't necessarily right. It's just to say that there's a nuance to what he's saying, whereby I think that Roots needs to go further and also change direction. And I recommended that before to Mark, and it just didn't happen. When you look at Roots, the original, again, it was 9 hours, just the original. So what you had as an example of a difference is you had a development of characters, you had a development of relationships that allowed you to understand Kente and Jufere in a personal way, so you got invested as a watcher. Here, they kind of rush you through everything in an attempt to cover so much terrain. My recommendation initially was always to do Roots as a spin-off, 4 hours about a character that we didn't get to hear about before, that didn't have a good life, that didn't end up with property, a sharecropper character. But they decided to remake the whole terrain, and I think it did a big disservice to the film, because they basically have us understand him in Africa over a course of about 20-25 minutes, and all of a sudden he's on a slave ship. Then all of a sudden he's at the slave market. Then all of a sudden he's and like, you can't do slavery that way. You really have to like explain it or not cover certain sections at all, or you'll do a disservice to those sections. So like in the original Roots, the scene of him, of Kunta Kinte, of LeVar Burton in this boat is literally almost like a whole episode, an hour episode. And somebody can say, I don't want to see an hour of that. But if you are going to see it, you need to see an extended amount of time to grasp how long this journey was, and like the realities of some of the nuance of language, of isolation, of just fear that were on these boats. One of the other things I do think I always recommend when people come to Roots is, if you're really gonna get invested in this, start following some of the other stuff that wasn't done for broadcast television, like Goodbye Uncle Tom, which came out in the early 1970s. And Goodbye Uncle Tom just shows it like in its raw nature, because everybody thinks they've seen slavery or think they even grasped slavery, and really none of us can grasp slavery because we weren't there in the gravity of how just vicious it was and just destructive in terms of like social relationships and economic like ideas of self and self-value. And I think that Goodbye Uncle Tom does a job that kind of Roots fell short on. But at the same time, I commend Roots for bringing it to a national audience that slavery happened. Now, as we come forward to today, one of the ways that I really connect with Snoop and what he's saying is that we need to do more than that. Like one of the ways that I connect with Snoop is to say, I don't agree that we need less, but I think we need more nuance. And so I want to know about specific families. I want young black kids to get out and be pushed to use Ancestry.com to find out what part of Angola they're from. I want a movement that actually starts to personalize how certain banks were involved in the slave trade, and that we still bank there and question that. If we're not going to do that, then I do agree with Snoop that it's kind of just saying it in a general historical sense. The other thing that Snoop said that was kind of like wrong historically is slavery was hundreds of years ago. It wasn't, Snoop. That's the only thing I will tell you. It's like slavery didn't really end until the 40s. That was Juneteenth in the 40s. Before that, there was like this gray area that they used peonage as a form of slavery. And it really didn't just absolutely end like he said. Basically, they passed a law where they would investigate, but it's not like everybody just said, I'm going to give all my slaves back even in the 40s. So if your grandma was born, if your grandma was born in the 40s, she was alive when they still had slavery. And I think we got to really understand it wasn't hundreds of years ago. And even if it was hundreds of years ago, this is where Roots fall short. Show us the connection line between slavery and now. And why your mama is a single mother. And why your father is in prison. And why we have so many issues with creating some semblance of a black community. And why blackness as a whole is subjugated to white oppression. That's what you need to show. You can say that Haley was, but like in a sense, no, he wasn't. It was like these new people in a room saying what they want to do to make a condensed version of something that was from the 70s. So they took like 20 hours and made it into 4. And in doing that, I think they did a disservice to the gravity of what Roots was, because for this generation, they don't really grasp that when Roots came on television, it was a movement. I'm going to show you guys a second clip just so you can kind of get how big Roots was.
Restaurants and bars were saying, we have the big screen television, come here, have your dinner, and you can watch Roots.
Theaters emptied out. Meetings were rescheduled. Even Las Vegas seemed vacant.
They closed the casinos in Vegas when Roots aired. Nobody was on the streets.
Casinos were empty because people were watching Roots, and that is something.
As those 8 nights unfolded and the audience grew, and then it was the national conversation.
Over the 8 consecutive nights, Roots attracted more viewers than any previous TV drama. It's unlikely any television series will again have the impact that Roots had in 1977. Roots wasn't just a popular program, it was a cultural landmark, a phenomenon that transformed Americans' understanding of slavery. Roots is the story of Alex Haley's family, beginning with his great-great-great-great-grandfather, who was captured in Africa and brought to America as a slave. The miniseries follows the family's saga through 100 years of slavery and finally to freedom.
And Alex, when he talked about these characters and what he knew about them, literally, you were on the edge of your seat.
Every time it was absolutely riveting. Absolutely riveting. He was a master storyteller.
When Roots was first greenlit by ABC, African-American actors saw a unique opportunity to play roles of substance.
The actors were terribly excited to be part of it because we'd never had anything like this before to be part of.
The toughest role to cast was Kunta Kinte. The whole miniseries hinged on finding an actor who was believable, physical, and young.
First time I was in front of camera was the screen test, March 27th, 1976. I was a sophomore in theater school at USC. I didn't know about acting for the camera.
So when Roots came on television, everybody stopped watching TV. Like not just black folks though. Like for that whole moment, Roots was like the thing to watch, and it awakened the nation. That didn't happen here because they didn't execute it properly. And so I come back to it and I just say, I feel, this is my own personal critique, the better way to go would have been to do a niche story inside of Roots that wasn't done in the original. Give us something new. Don't retell Kunta Kinte's story. Tell us somebody else's story in the same, you can do it in the same family line if you want, but tell their story and just be original. The second part is you got to bring it forward to today and tell us how that led to some of the impacts we're seeing in our community at this moment so that we grasp that it's not just a past tense kind of thing. And the thing I'll tell Snoop is this idea, this inspirational idea of show us all these positive images of black people today. I get it. But at the same time, I think at times black people that are in certain circles don't understand how bad black people are doing today. I did a piece for inequality.org, and what I showed is that the middle black family, when you take away the family car, is worth $1,700. There's 14 million black families. So 7 million black homes have less than $1,700 for 3 people of worth. And so when you start to grasp that, and then you come up to only 5% of black families have more than $350 hard of worth, full worth. You really got to understand there isn't this critical mass of black people that are doing exponentially well. It's just you might be around 100 of them that are in the top 1% every day because of hip hop, because of entertainment, and that's okay. I'm not saying nothing's wrong with that, but they don't get a full show. And I know we have Empire on TV and everybody loves that. But we need to get away from the inspirational stuff and just tell the reality of how black people living like Good Times was doing. Sanford and Son. And the last thing I'm gonna say about Roots, about the actual talent. I have no problem with the British actors. No problem with Idris. No problem with Cheetah Wally. No problem with the young boy playing Kunta. But I feel we have enough young African American talent that are descendants of slaves that are here in this country today that are not getting opportunities, that we could have casted that as a young African American that came from slavery and then heard his story about his personal struggle and his family about how they've dealt with slavery. These are things that make the undergird for how you visualize a story. When Roots came on, Maya Angelou played Kunta Kinte's grandma. And so Maya Angelou had this whole backstory that gave the underbelly of Roots and gave it momentum. Here, you just casted some British black actor. And it doesn't make sense to me. That's just my feeling. I'm not saying that I have anything against the young boy, and I don't have nothing against British actors as a whole. But black talent can't. If black talent can't play themselves, I'm talking about African American descendants of slaves. What can they play? So in the end, you know, Roots came on. It's gonna be on for 4 days, 4 hours in total. I'm not telling you to not watch it, but I definitely can say I understand where Snoop is coming from in terms of his overall like feeling towards it. And I just feel like we just gotta get honest and ask for more, and demand more from these stories if they're gonna be told. Thank you.